You don't need to change your identity. You receive your identity. There's also an assumption here that the mind is your brain. And I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, but your mind is actually not your brain. And I got a little bit into that on a previous video, but your brain is a physical organ. It's cells, okay? Neurologically, without getting into all the anatomy of the neurons and whatnot. Your brain is your brain. It's an organ. Your mind is a spiritual I should say it exists in your spirit, which is external to your body. You are a spiritual being made in the image of God, and your decisions, your thoughts, your will is not in your brain. There is no seat of consciousness in your brain. Your consciousness that's your mind, that's your spiritual self that exerts its will upon the brain, and the brain carries out what you want to do. So there's an assumption here, because this is an atheistic worldview, that a problem in your mind means you have a problem in your physical brain, like there's some genetic defect somewhere. We just haven't discovered it yet. That is an assumption that is not proven. It is not true. But it's being put forth as reality. And that's because there's a bias towards, the thought that you can only explain things by the physical world. Like everything about your thinking is physically in the brain, and that's not true. It's a dangerous ideology that is coming out of postmodernism. There are progressive features to it, and it's atheistic. I want you to walk away with that. Let me close with a couple thoughts here. The LGBTQIA community claims that transgender individuals are often not cared for or discriminated against in various ways. And it's sad to say it's true. In some of these ways, in higher incidence of HIV, of STDs, substance abuse, addiction, anxiety, depression, suicide, financial hardship, homelessness, poverty, lack of peer support, lack of family support. But remember that we have to tease out pre-existing mental health disorders that a transgender individual might have that also plays a role in some of these things, such as substance abuse, anxiety, depression, suicide, and all of the social complications. That's my point, is you can't just say that this individual has those problems because they're transgender and they're oppressed. Now, they might be oppressed, and I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, and that's sad. But I'm just trying to make the case that you can't launch a study that doesn't tease out the underlying medical problems or underlying mental health disorders that somebody already has, that is separate from their transgender thought patterns that they had before they became transgender. That actually is playing a role in their choice to become transgender. These are some of the flaws in the medical literature, some of the scientific literature out there that you need to be aware of as you read things and hear things. We are acknowledging that the problem is in the mind, but we're not allowing treatment of the mind, which breaks my heart. We have endocrinologists and pediatricians practicing psychiatry without a license, is basically what they're doing. You'll also hear that conversion therapy should not be done. And I'm not talking about converting somebody's religious beliefs, but basically, we shouldn't counsel somebody to take on a different gender identity or to try to correct their gender identity to match their biological sex. That's conversion therapy. And the LGBTQIA community would say that we shouldn't do that. Well, of course we should do that. Jesus restores broken hearts. You don't need to change your identity. You receive your identity. God loves you, and God loved you even before he created you and had a plan for your life. Your value is not determined by others. Your value is determined by God. You are made in his image. That's your value. You are an image bearer of God.